I'm here with one of our favourite StyleCloud ambassadors, Jeremy Chou, and he's kindly joined us to answer some questions all about his career and how he kind of sees himself in the industry. So welcome and thanks for joining us. I'm going to get right into
Thanks for
it.
having me.
Yeah, let's dive straight into it. How did you first get into photography?
So my background is actually in architecture. I used to be an architect. So I went to school for architecture and I practiced, I worked in a fairly large firm for about 10 years. So when I got in, I wanted to do design, but the company I got into, they had me do more construction management portion of the work. So I obviously, really missed designing and being creative part of it. And I just, wasn't being fulfilled by my daily work. So I had two daughters, so I started taking pictures of them just as a literally just as a creative outlet. And I incorporate a lot of what I learned in architecture as far as composition, lighting, and layering and stuff like that into my photos, and just took photos of them, put it on social media at the time. But we didn't have Instagram back then. I put it on Flickr, if you remember that.
I do.
So
I do.
okay, so yes, I put it on that, and then eventually moved on to Facebook, and people saw it. It was different. They hired me for family photos, engagement session, and this very quickly turned to weddings. That's how I got started. Yeah, so I didn't go to school for photography or anything like that. I just kind of picked it up.
I mean, that kind of leads us into my next question is, even after all this time, what do you love about being a photographer? What still excites you?
Yeah, so I mainly focus on weddings, and I do some editorial stuff for brands, for bridal brands here and there. But um, what I really love about photography is the creating an image that actually tells a story. I think at the end of the day, we're all storytellers. Doesn't matter if it's still photos or video. I mean, we're just all trying to tell a story, and it's a very intimate story of my clients on their one of the biggest days of their lives. Yeah, even after 15 years, I still love just capturing those moments for my clients, and then kind of reliving those moments later on as well.
Yeah, yeah, I love the way you talk about storytelling.
Yeah.
And if you what would you kind of want people to say about you after they've, about you as a photographer? How would you describe yourself and how would you want other people to describe you?
Um,
It's a
that's
deep
funny because
question, I know.
yeah, I mean that's funny because most people that they have not met me in real life, they look at my work, they'll think I'm like a very serious guy. I'm not. So photography is what I do for work. It definitely doesn't define who I am, and my work tends to look a more editorial, more serious, I guess. But yeah, so people meet me, I always want them to think I'm just a pretty down to earth guy. I mean, I you know, we, I think people glamorize photographers because we travel for weddings and we go to Europe and all that, and at the end of the day, we just photography, we shoot photos.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Um, I'm always interested in hearing what photographers say about this. So, 15 years into a career,
Mhm.
how do you stay creatively inspired in an industry that's really changed a lot in the last 5 years, I would say?
Yeah, so I think to stay inspired, I don't draw inspiration from photography, if that makes sense. I think if you keep looking at other photographers' work, yeah, it tends to get repetitive, it tends to get redundant, and it's just like you have this feeling kind of we're all doing the same thing, which to a big part big part of we kind of are because we shoot weddings. There's specific stuff you have to get throughout the day. So in that sense, we all kind of do the same thing. But where I find inspiration is actually from just art. I go to a lot of museums, just look at Renaissance art, and I love looking at the art from that period, especially specific still life paintings. It's always a very um, directional use of lighting and the
Mm,
mood, and I'm trying to capture the mood of the subjects. And if you look at I mean, obviously they didn't have electricity back then, so a lot of it just window light, natural light, and how do you manipulate the natural light to make it look interesting. I find a lot of that from the paintings from the Renaissance period. And the modern art, they inspire me a different way because you know again, I think artists, we all try to tell stories. We're just through a different medium. And then, the modern art, you kind of look at it like, how are they trying to tell stories? A different direction, is a different it's different way of interpretation of what we go through each day. So a lot of that actually transfers into on a wedding day, just how to tell a story in a more fresh way that hasn't been done before. So yeah, so stuff like that still gets me inspired every day to go out to shoot weddings, try to create stuff that just a different way of telling the same story over and over again.
I mean, I really like that way of staying fresh by looking for inspiration in art, because rather than chasing trends and trying to see what's cool, it means you're constantly just renewing the way you look at structure and composition, but it's still feeding you. That's such a great.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a reason why we look at art from the Renaissance period because it's still relevant. It still moves us to this day, even after four or
Yeah,
500 years.
yeah,
Uh, and I wish my photograph would do something like that 400 years from now. People still look at it, still feel something.
yeah. What, how do you know, like, when, I don't know whether you do, you feel it in the moment as you're taking an image, or do you feel it in the edit? But sometimes we just know we've taken a great photo. How do you think, wow, that's just jumping straight
I
from
f-
this to one of my favorites?
yeah, I feel it in the moment. So I think to be a good wedding photographer or amazing wedding photographer, you have to be kind of intuitive. You have to be kind of really, what's the word? You have to empath, I think is the word. You have to be really in tune with your client's feelings. Because a lot of these moments, they literally just come like that. Like you just, a dad walks in for the first look. You don't know how the dad's gonna react. But sometimes it just happens, right? Like the emotions come out, and wedding day is one of those things where just a lot of emotions you bottled up for years is stories just jump out at you, and so you kind of have to be ready to capture those moments. And yeah, when I take photos, I kind of know in the moment where I got a good shot. I shoot film as well, so like I can't see it on LCD camera, like at the screen. I can't tell what I got, but I see it here. So a lot of times I take it, I was like, oh yeah, that's gonna be a nice moment.
Oh, that's great. I mean, just from, we speak to a lot of photographers, and I feel like uh, people requesting film as part of their
Mhm.
wedding packages on the rise. Is that something that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird to see that because I mean, like I said, I started 15 years ago. I started with digital like everybody else, but I very quickly switched to film. So I've been shooting film for a better part of my entire career. So it's definitely interesting to see now it becomes a trend. But yeah, it just, I think once you've been doing this for long enough, you kind of see trends come and go. And then definitely back in like, 2000,
Mm.
early 2010s. I think there was a big push to go to film, and we went to digital. Now everybody wants back to film. My thing is always to just stop. Don't chase trends. You just do what works for you. Just stick with that.
Um, this is quite, this is at the risk of kind of dating this particular interview. It's been really interesting in
Mhm,
the last week looking at some of the images that have come out of like the White House, and also Martin Parr, who's a very famous photographer in the UK, passed
mhm.
away recently. So I'd love to know, and I haven't asked you this question, I haven't given you this question beforehand, but I'd love to know who your kind of photographic heroes are. Is there anyone whose work you?
Yeah, there's actually one, Rodney Smith.
Okay.
I think he's American. I'm not sure. He might be British. I think he's American. Um, but Rodney Smith, his work is very quirky and very unexpected. If you look at his earlier work, a lot of black and white work, it's very editorial. It's definitely very editorial.
Mm.
A lot of it can be applied to just wedding photo shoots as well. But it's just very unexpected. It's quirky. It's not necessarily something I would shoot, but I respect the thought that goes behind creating an image. And I think before we kind of jump too far, editorial means different to everybody, but editorial to me just means something that's intentional. Just
Yeah.
everything in the
Yeah.
photo is intentional. That's what my interpretation is. And Ronnie Smith is definitely one of those guys that um, yeah, if you look at his work, he's definitely very intentional, but it leaves you wonder why he did that or why he chose to frame it that way. It's always very symmetrical, which speaks to my architectural mind. So everything is always very very methodical, and I like the composition of his image. It's very comfortable looking at it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites.
I love that. Um, and I'd love to just talk to you a bit about your business journey. And as someone who's
Mhm.
a creative on the other side of the kind of on the other side of it, which is creating websites and brands and things, I know that being a business person came kind of second to me. It was the creative first. But so what did you find hard when you first started your business? What was the hardest?
Mine's actually reversed. I think I was always a business person first, and then then the artist. Yeah. So, and then a little backstory. So my dad, ever since I was little, he's always been an entrepreneur. He's always had his own company. I think he worked for somebody for like 10 years, and then same thing. He just started his own company, and ever since I have memory of my dad working, he's always owned his own company. Um, so for me, starting the business in the beginning, it was something I've always looked forward to. Like even when I worked in the architect's office. I wanted to start my own studio. So it was just something that I've always wanted to do. Like I didn't want to, be stuck working for the man for the next, 50 years of my life. So I also want to take that journey into my own hands. And,
Yeah.
in the beginning, business obviously was the most difficult part, obviously, is getting clients, right? Um, I think I kind of just fell into the photography business because it just happened to be something that resonated with people. It really started just as a hobby, just taking photos of my kids, and I put it on, on Facebook at the time. There was no even Instagram on this, so I put it on Facebook, and people saw it. They thought it was different, and people like, "Hey, how much do you charge?" I was like, "I can charge for this."
I love that.
And and my first year, I shot 35 weddings. First year,
Wow.
second year, I did 40. So then I was like, okay, this is insane. I can't do both architecture and photography at the same time. I got to make a choice. So I decided to quit architecture.
Yeah. Okay. Um, I mean, that's a juggle. That must have been really, really hard. Um,
It was very difficult, and my daughters were so little. They were so little at the time. It was very, very difficult. So I had to make a choice.
yeah.
Between I had to make a choice so I could be a good dad to them.
And just thinking about your business and how you've grown it, what would you say is the one thing that's made the biggest difference to your business? It might be kind of a system or an investment or a decision where you decided to just do things a certain way.
Um, I think I think especially for a creative business, I think it's consistency in my work. Um, I'm not the one chasing trends. Like I've never done that. And I don't, and I couldn't tell you why I didn't do it. I just didn't do it. I mean, wait, let me back up a little bit. In the beginning of my career, I think for the first 2 years, I did that. I think everybody had to go through kind of that phase, but it wasn't chasing trends. It was more like trying to figure out who I was as a photographer, like what direction I want to take my business, my art. Um, and once I kind of have that dialed in, I've been just refining my work. I haven't really been chasing or changing my style to meet any kind of whatever trendy nowadays. I've never done that. So I think one of the things that's very important with business is the consistency of work. And this is something I talk about in workshop as well. Your consistency builds trust with your client,
Yeah.
and the more your clients trust you, the more they'll pay you. That's kind of just the magic formula there. So, and then you can think of any luxury brands, actually any brands. You buy certain product because the brand promises a certain outcome when you buy the product. It could be the craftsmanship, it could be customer service, it could be value, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But um, the more consistent a branding message is, the more likely you're going to buy the product because you can trust the product. Um, Same thing what we do, and our consistent comes from your work, comes from the way you talk to your clients, comes the way from even your review has to be good throughout the years. You can't have like an off year where you have 10 clients complaining. You always has to be very good with your customer service. So yeah, the more consistent I am, the more I realize the more successful my business could be.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think the job of anyone in business is to eliminate risk for the client so that they stop making the decision based on price, right?
Well, yeah, especially for weddings. I mean, clients hiring us, 16 months, 12 a year in advance. Like, you gotta prove you're good for this 1 year.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that can be proven by your track record before that. So
So what would you
mm.
what's the one piece of advice you'd tell a new photographer who's kind of in their first year?
Yeah, I always tell photographers, and I do a lot of workshops too. So I talk to a lot of photographers, and it's mentoring a lot of them as well. One thing I always tell them that you have to decide what you want to do with your business. Okay, for a lot of people, it will always be a hobby. It will always be something a weekend business, and which is fine. But for some people, you want to make it full-time business, right? So what I tell them, you need to know that very fast off the bat, and you have to decide where do you want to take this business. And I was tell them it is a marathon, not a sprint. Like meaning, what it means you have to make decision that's good for the long run, not just for the immediate profit, not for immediate gratification of like, oh, I can. book this job now, but this might not be the good brand. This might not be the good branding message for my company. So that's one thing I always tell new photographers, like you gotta know where you want to take your business. You can't be, shooting in the dark. You gotta really have a plan here.
Yeah, okay. I like that. So focus.
Mm.
And let's just move on, obviously, to the kind of carry on the business theme. I just obviously we loved helping you get your website up and running. So
Yeah, you guys been
I'd
great.
I'd love to talk about it. What for you?
Yeah.
What role does your website play in attracting the right clients, do you think?
Wait, say that one more time.
What role does your website play in attracting the right clients?
Oh, so okay, so I'm a firm believer, when it comes to marketing, don't put everything in one basket, right? So I think a lot of photographers they fully go into social media, right? They just push that, push that, push that. But the website, you go look at it, it's like you haven't been updating in like 10 years.
Mm.
Um, so website to me is very important. It's the first impression that clients see when they try to find a photographer. I have a pretty robust SEO thanks to you guys. So when people search, certain keywords that I target in, that they do hit my website. And I think first impression is very, very important. I think Google says you have like 7 seconds or something to capture people's attention. So you guys, the website design does allow me to capture people's attention right away, and then hopefully retain them to go through the whole funnel in my website. Yeah, it's very important. It just, obviously, the whole ecosystem of social media, website, Facebook groups of Reddit, whatever. I mean, all those things they all work together. But I think my website's still front and center because ultimately everybody go on website to check out your work, your past work, your blog, and all that, and not to mention SEO and all that. And it's also a social proof. If you if you have a website that hasn't been updated in like 3 5 years, people might not think you're still in business. you know.
Yeah.
So
I'm really glad. It's interesting to hear you use the word funnel because I'm a marketer who builds marketing funnels. Like I love that side of marketing.
yeah,
Um, how do you use your website to like, because a lot of people will build a website, then just as you say, leave it, and it's more of a pretty shop window than the engine
right.
that drives your business. How do you use your website as
Yeah,
a
so
kind of
there's
funnel?
definitely so like everything else, I think everything has a storyline. So if you look at my website, the way it's set up, it's definitely like a step by step to lead people um through a process. So, when you log on my website, just like those hero images, right? It's like these are the best photos I've taken last year, 2 years, whatever. So the idea is that photo immediately grab people's attention, so they will want to keep going. So once you go down, you go to about Jeremy. So okay, so let's learn more about Jeremy. So I want to be the person they know who I am behind the camera, not just somebody takes photos. My face is on there, my stories on there, my I think my kids' photos on there. Um, and then from that, then you go to social proof, and there's the publication portion of that where people see where you've been published, and then eventually leads them into my blog so they can look at the latest work. And then lastly, I want to go into inquiry, right? So that's when I've already established my value. So there's a specific way I want people to visit to work through my website.
Mm.
And this is something that you can, obviously Google can help you track the people's flow in the website. And it is something I constantly tweak. Just like, okay, how do I get people to move the way I want them to move? Because last thing we want, honestly, is people go to the website, go straight to inquiry. We don't want that because they're missing the whole storytelling part of to building up you building up a storyline. Why I'm here? Why are you here? Why do you like my work? And then you go to inquiry, and that tend to have the value built into it already when they hit the inquire button. Yeah, usually when people just go straight to inquiry, those are price shoppers. They don't look at anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at a website, there's enough information on there. You can kind of ascertain, like, how much this guy charges. But if they go straight to inquiry, usually those don't work out.
Yeah. I mean, I'm interested in how you're using your website to build that trust, to show that the trust, the consistency. I think it's so important. Um,
Yeah.
what do you find that people say? What do you find people say to you is most commonly is the reason why they booked you?
Honestly, it's consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah. People look at my work, they're just like, you can go back to, you know, 5 10 years back. They're like, oh, this guy just keeps getting better doing his genre. Like I've never deviated. So the word I use is refinement. I don't use, I don't say, I don't, so this, I actually get in trouble for saying this. I don't think I'm a creative photographer, meaning I constantly refine my work to the point where I can take one genre and really refine it to a way where it's recognizable, right? But I'm not the one where I'm doing one thing and all of a sudden let me try something else. I'm not that guy. Like I'm just very consistent in doing what I do. Um, and I think that's very important to my clients where they look at my work, especially like what we talked about earlier. They're booking me for a wedding that's like a year, 16 months out. They don't want Jeremy to show up being a completely different photographer, right? They book me for certain specific style. If I show up doing something completely different, they're like,
Yeah.
what the heck, Jeremy? Like, that's not what I hired you for. Like, your work wasn't like this. So a lot of clients where they can see my work going, past 10, 15 years, they're like, well, this guy just keeps getting better at doing this specific genre. And I think that's why a lot of clients book me. Just they know how consistent I am with my work.
Yeah, and then then it feels and looks more effortless when you're refining the processes and but still being consistent.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a big distinction of being refining your work and being boring.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had this conversation with many people. They were like, "Well, if you don't change, you're boring." I'm like, "No," I said, "I don't think if unless you're charging like $50,000 a wedding, like you haven't hit your potential yet, right?
Yeah,
So keep refining your work until you get to the level where you can actually say, I'm at the peak of what I do." Because I think a lot of photographers they get bored or get tired, they get lazy, frankly.
yeah,
So they just want to change to a different style because they think that's more interesting without pushing the boundary of what they already know.
yeah, absolutely. That makes
Mhm.
sense. And what would you say? Like you mentor a lot of photographers. What
Mhm.
what should they be looking for in a website?
Um, first of all, update it.
Yeah,
And then also curation of your work. And this is something I work with a lot of photographers. I mean, you guys have great templates, so it's very easy to get a good looking website up. You guys make it super easy. But the art is picking the right photo to represent your brand. And
mm,
I think that's one of the things where a lot of photographers need a lot of help on. And for a few reasons. I think a lot of them don't even realize what marketing message they want to project. I think that's one of the bigger issues. So if you don't know that, if you don't know who you are as a photographer, you don't know what photos to pick, and you end up picking photos that you think will attract different kind of clients. So like for example, I mentor a photographer. She was I forgot where she was, but she wanted to shoot in like very tropical area, like Mexico, like just like destination stuff. And on her main page, she has one photo. It looks like it's just a regular park with a palm tree, just one single palm tree. So I was like, "What are you trying to say here?" She said, "Well, palm tree is tropical, right?" So it's So when I was in architecture school, they told us if you're designing a library, don't make the building look like a book.
yeah,
It's too obvious,
yeah,
right? So I think a lot of photographers focus on what it looks like rather than what it feels like,
yeah.
right? And I was trying to explain to her like you should find photos that feels tropical, photos that give you that vibe that relaxing on the beach. That it's a feeling. It's not a look. So and again, it makes sense. We're visual. I mean, we're visual artists. Like we look at stuff, but I think to take it to a next level, you really have to know what photos make people feel like.
Oh, that's so good. I love that.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. So just kind of, looking forward,
Mhm.
what are you excited about that's coming next for you creatively or professionally? What's in the pipeline?
Yeah. So obviously, COVID kind of shut everything down for a little bit. So in so our industry actually in America at least is there's actually a consensus of industry-wide slowdown since 2023. So
Yeah.
we're slowly picking back up now. So 2026, I'm just hoping more weddings will come back, and then that people will be more willing to have their celebrations. And we're seeing a lot of trends go to smaller weddings, and then a lot of just no bridal party now. Just bride and groom. I think it's a lot easier for bride and groom to deal with all the drama and having groomsmen and bridesmaids, but who's gonna be a maid of honor. I think a lot of it just don't want to deal with that anymore. But yeah, I'm looking forward to next year that more destination international weddings coming back. I don't think we're gonna hit another pandemic. I hope not. Um, but yeah, so hopefully, destination international wedding come back. I have a few coming up next year in all. Before this, 75% weddings I do, they're all travel wedding, international weddings. So after COVID, that kind of cut back down to about 30%. So hopefully that pick back up again, and then go to see a different places in the world.
Oh, Great. Okay. Well, I've
Yeah,
got three kind of quick fire questions to wrap up with,
yeah,
and
sure.
I'll just fire them at you. What's one word that describes how photography makes you feel?
Nostalgic.
Brilliant. Favorite thing to photograph?
Favorite thing to photograph? Food, the what I eat.
Love that. Your dream location or project?
Oof. I think Bali. I've actually not done a wedding in Bali in the Maldives. It's somewhere in that area. I've done Thailand, but I've not done Bali or Maldives. I think that as far area, that's where I would like to take my to do a destination wedding. And as far as project goes, I would love to do more branding photos for hotel chains. I did one for Grand Velas Hotel back in Mexico back in I think 2018 or something like that. We basically went to their all the properties in Mexico. We did fake weddings for each property. So these those photos for advertisement. Would love to do that for another property at some point.
Oh, I'm
Putting
manifesting
out
that for you for
yeah,
sure, Bali.
putting
We've
out
got
to
it
the
in.
putting out to the universe.
I love that. Couple more questions. When you're not
Yeah.
shooting, what are you doing?
Watching movies, museum. I hang out with my daughters. They're old now, but when they're free, I do hang out with them quite a bit. Um, Other than that, just work, try to develop more what try to develop my business more, and yeah, just typical stuff. I do love to eat. I'm a foodie. I love trying new restaurants. Anytime the new restaurant open up, just always love to try it.
Brilliant. And finally, what advice do you wish you'd been given sooner?
Uh, I okay. So one thing nobody told me is that you don't know if you're cut out to be an entrepreneur until you actually do it.
Yeah,
Watching my dad doing it, obviously, it was like, oh, it looks easy, but I didn't know he shielded a lot of bullshit from us.
yeah, yeah,
I didn't
absolutely.
know that. That's one thing I do tell my students now. I was like, hey, this is a pretty lonely road. Like, if you want to do this. I mean, obviously, if you have a spouse or another source of income, by all means, like, take advantage of that. But if you're doing this, like, for me, this is all I do. I do this for a living. Putting my kids through college with this, so it is so entrepreneurship it's very lonely. It's very hard. It's very risky. So you have to kind of know all these things going heading into it. Like, are you okay taking on that risk? Are you okay? Because your income, it's kind of like a roller coaster, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
you just like swimming in money. Sometimes, like, how am I gonna pay rent? So, but yeah, you have to be very good at managing money, and that's one thing I wish people have told me before I started. So that's something I make sure I tell all my students when they come to my workshop.
Oh, I love that. And just if people would like to find out more about your mentoring and your workshop program, where can we find you? Where can they
Yeah,
find
so they can actually do I have two websites. One's my name, just jeremychow.com, and jeremychowworkshops.com, just two of them. On my Instagram at Jeremy Chow Photography. If I have any workshops, mentorship opportunity, or working for my team, it's always posted on either, one of those three channels.
you? Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much for chatting to us today. It's
Yeah,
been
thanks for having me.
a pleasure.
It's been fun. Thanks for having me.